Okay, picture this. You walk into a crowded room. There's chatter, people are laughing, they're effortlessly flowing from one conversation to the next. You smile, you nod, you're trying your absolute hardest to fit in, but deep down, there is this profound, isolating feeling that you are just entirely out of place. It's a strangely common experience, but man, it feels incredibly lonely. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to look really closely at the architecture of the outsider mind, decoding these hidden patterns of human behavior to understand exactly why you might be feeling this way.
I mean, seriously, have you ever felt like everyone else was handed this secret social guidebook at birth and you just somehow missed the memo? Most people jump to a really quick assumption here. They think, oh, it's just low confidence, or they're just shy. But when we actually look at the psychology behind it, it reveals something way more fascinating. This feeling, it isn't about a lack of confidence at all. It actually comes down to how your brain is specifically wired to process the world around you. To really understand this wiring, we're going to decode the 5 rare traits of people who feel like outsiders. Let's dive right into trait 1, craving depth over small talk. So if you've ever felt physically and mentally drained by the standard social script, the obligatory chats about the weather, the morning commute, or whatever fleeting trend is happening right now, well, this is your first major clue. Highly intelligent individuals often find small talk completely exhausting. Why? Because their minds are genuinely hungry for deep, abstract meaning and purpose. It's not just about making polite conversation for you. You're actively looking for layered ideas. Now, society loves to label people who avoid small talk as antisocial, but the absolutely crucial point here is this. Your preference for purpose does not mean you dislike people. Not at all. It just means you're looking for a really rare level of connection. It's a depth that most people honestly rarely reach in passing conversation. You'd much rather have fewer but vastly more meaningful relationships. Which leads us right into trait 2, extreme observational awareness. You see, outsiders don't just walk into a room, they absorb it. While a crowd might be super relaxed, just enjoying the moment, your brain is basically working in overdrive. You're processing an overwhelming amount of sensory data without those standard filters that most people seem to have. You're constantly spotting patterns, noticing subtle injustices, or picking up on tiny behavioral changes that completely bypass everyone else. You catch the micro expressions, you hear the subtle shifts in someone's tone of voice. And as you can probably imagine, this constant, unfiltered awareness of your environment is literally exhausting because you're noticing absolutely everything. Your reactions and your thoughts can sometimes be deemed too intense by the rest of the crowd. When you clearly see the layers beneath the surface, it's really hard to just pretend they aren't there. And unfortunately, that often pushes you even further into that outsider role. Okay, moving on to trait 3, validation and hyperindependence. This trait is all about where you draw your sense of self-worth. Look, we live in a world that is constantly craving external social approval, right? So many people go through their entire lives chasing likes, comments, and public recognition just to feel valued. But if you feel like an outsider, your validation comes from within. You have this incredibly sturdy reliance on your own internal standards, not the applause of the crowd. I actually love this specific anecdote from our source material, treating your birthday like a normal day. It just perfectly captures the outsider's mindset. You don't need a massive public announcement, a giant party, or a flood of social media notifications to feel significant. Your internal compass is already set. Now, while this reliance on internal validation is a huge strength, it can sometimes make you come across as a bit cold or distant to people who rely really heavily on that constant social feedback loop. Let's unpack trait 4, the autonomy instinct. This hyperindependence we've been talking about, it isn't just a quirky personality trait. Psychology suggests it's actually frequently a survival mechanism. Maybe you grew up as the easy child or in a home where you just felt unheard. So your brain learned a really critical lesson early on. Support isn't guaranteed. You developed emotional armor. You became the go-to person who solves every single problem alone. You minimize your personal needs to avoid being a burden. Because leaning on others doesn't feel natural or even safe, you tend to stay on the periphery of social groups, watching everyone else connect while keeping your emotional armor firmly in place. And finally, we arrive at trait 5, a high sensitivity to control. Outsiders are acutely, almost painfully aware of power dynamics. You have this highly tuned radar for manipulative people or fake group dynamics. And when that radar goes off, it triggers what psychology calls psychological reactance. It's that instant, undeniable spark of resistance you feel right in your chest when someone tries to tell you what to do, how to act, or how to think. This innate resistance to being controlled means you have a super strong preference for standing alone rather than just blindly following a crowd to blend in. You are, through and through, a self-directed thinker.
So, where does all of this leave us? Let's talk about embracing your powerful mind. It's really easy to see how these 5 traits can make you feel super isolated, but we need to totally shift the narrative here. Just look at this blueprint we've mapped out together. A deep craving for meaning, extreme observational awareness, sturdy internal validation, hyperindependence, and a high sensitivity to control. When you put all of that together, what do you actually see? You don't see a broken social compass. You see the complete picture of a highly perceptive, deeply independent, and profoundly authentic human being.
The truth is, feeling like an outsider is not a flaw. Your past, your early environment, or being the easy child, sure, they might explain exactly why you developed these traits, but they absolutely do not define your value. Feeling like you're on the outside looking in is actually a massive testament to your self-directed intelligence. You see the world differently, quite simply, because your mind is built to see more, to feel more, and to question more. Once you truly understand the architecture of your own mind, honestly, everything changes. You can finally stop exhausting yourself trying to fit into a social guidebook that frankly wasn't written for you anyway. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. Now that you know your mind isn't flawed, but incredibly powerful, how are you going to use your unique perspective today? Stop trying to fit in and start utilizing your decoded strengths. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the fascinating ways your mind works.